Welcome to Shared Insights, the podcast from BA Insight. My name is Pete Wright, and I'm joined today by, we have another returning guest. Rick Fafard, Technical Director of Professional Services, is here. Rick, welcome back to Shared Insights. Thank you for joining us again.
Glad to be here.
You are here today to share some of the key lessons that you have learned in your experience working with legal implementations, working with large firms that bring many systems together. Before we move into the more technical details, why don't you set the stage for us? What is it that defines the unique challenges that come with deploying technology for your legal customers in particular?
The legal industry is perhaps more sophisticated than a lot of other industries when it comes to information, or as most law firms would term it, knowledge and knowledge management. They have entire departments devoted to knowledge management, whereas your oil and gas industry or other industries wouldn't be quite as advanced in their thinking of paper and knowledge, and the data within a given contract is of what's the most value. So I'd say fundamentally they're advanced. Paper is money to them, and charging their time is the bottom line. But finding things, and the legal industry in general is just wired that way. Where versus a product-based industry, where pharmaceutical, where you're actually delivering product at the end of the day. The product at a law firm is the paper, so to speak. Although less and less paper gets printed as we go forward. It's all electronic, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, paper. At least we can be nostalgic about it here. Let's talk then about some of the specific lessons you've learned from working with the many law firms that have come across your path.
Law firms we see, do vary from a regional law firm, say a law firm that would be fairly large in the Washington, D.C. and the, political arena and the federal government area of things, versus global law firms that have offices around the world, as many as 50 offices in different countries and cities, from here to Australia and Hong Kong and back. Let's dig into some of the challenges that law firms have. And challenges evolve around two different things here. One is the sheer amount of data that law firms both provide and consume. So they consume data from every government institution and to a large extent, every corporate institution they work with, as well as the number of clients and matters that they have over time in process. So the sheer amount of data, both internal to the company and external, from external sources, from libraries and judicial proceedings and jurisdictions that they, practice law in. Sheer amount of data, and then on the other side, the security around their data. Law firms must operate with the correct levels of security around who can see what ethical walls are in place, which would either grant or deny people access to different information. So when you look at even a mid-sized law firm that may have 5,000-10,000 clients and 50,000 or 100,000 different matters that they have worked on, and some obviously they are working on at the current present time, the amount of information that is going back and forth and that they have to be knowledgeable on and access with security, the proper amounts of security, is just enormous. So those are the two biggest challenges I think that face law firms.
At what point do you jump into the challenge of organization? Right, you're talking about the sheer volume of sort of matter that comes into the system. When does making it organized and I guess making it sort of personalized to, let's say, the attorney become a significant challenge?
The organization of the data is always a challenge. For a given law firm, you may have a dozen different practice groups or practice areas, and quite often you will find that the real estate practice group, for example, may have been property and leasing practice area 6 months ago. So the way they organize their own firms in their practice areas has a lot to do with how you would want to organize and manage the data. And then you have offices. Things are regional. The laws on tenant at will are very different here in Boston, where I am, than they are in London or Hong Kong. So the offices people operate out of and the jurisdictions that are involved do make a very large impact on what is pertinent to you as an attorney or you as a practice support lawyer working for the attorney. That comes down to when you're looking to implement search systems for law firms, being able to properly categorize and organize information is key. I did say jokingly almost that the practice area and the practice group may have changed over time, and I've seen that with a lot of law firms. They restructure, they try to be more efficient and direct at what their different groups are doing. So things do change, but you do want to have an overall structure that provides information to people's fingertips the quickest way possible. And the organization of the firm, as well as the content that they're looking for, really have to mesh. And most law firms do a really good job at that. They have a decent structure around their practice groups, around their offices, around their jurisdictions. And many law firms go even further and will put together a spotlight or keywords or areas of interest that provide additional classification of documents.
So you're working with a law firm now that is implementing, I don't know, how do you want to say it? He says that has done this around stages. I'm not sure. Are they in the middle of the process right now, or are they finished? Or
well, I think that reference was to one of the law firms I'm working with right now. I have a couple that I'm working with right now. One in particular is an interesting case in the way they've approached some of the organization of data. We'll describe their case and how they've come to what I believe is a very elegant and clean solution. It's a global law firm. They have, I believe, somewhere around 50 offices. I should know off the top of my head, 50, 60 different. And each office has their own, document management system. There's a couple of different flavors of document management systems with a law firm this size, being global. You'll find different ones in the European area than you will in the U.S. But fundamentally, what they've done, because it is a global practicing law firm, is they've wanted to allow people to search across the company to find information they need, whether it's a labor law agreement in California or a real estate buyout from a European country. So they've put together a fairly straightforward enterprise search center, which not only brings in all of the information from their document management systems, but it also tags the information in if you will, a global taxonomy, organizational structure. You can still pick simple things like, I want the Paris office, and I'm looking for, XYZ. But you get a very Google-like almost approach to finding things in the entire company. A lot of firms use outside firms. A lot of law firms use outside firms to do case and matter information that is up to date. So you'll get the Thomson Reuters West KM type additional augmentation of documents integrated into their search system, so they can pull up a citation and find out what's going on with this case law at this point in time just by clicking through to it. So the real-time realities of what is the latest case law on something is at their fingertips, all in the context of their own documents. Their system does let you, as I said, pick things like office or practice area, and they've got a very straightforward laid out practice area that does fit their global office structure. And on top of that, everything is built in with security in mind. So if, I don't know, it's hard to make up cases. So if it's V company X, or, company A versus company B, and ethically you being an attorney, a partner in the New York office who's working with company C, who potentially has something to do with company A and company B, and you're not able to view any of that content, it is secured so that you can't even search for it or find it. The keys here is they've basically brought everything into an enterprise search, kept it simple like a Google approach, where it's really just a search box on the main page. Not a lot of fancy, check boxes, and you've got to, click here and add this here. Just Google brings you to a search center, which has a lot of filters on the left that look like, your Amazon style, or you pick your favorite, e-commerce website, and some tabs across the top so you can look in. I want to look in, the U.S. area, or I want to, just look in groups of things, things that are West KM, for example, from Thomson Reuters enabled, so I can look up case law and pick the jurisdiction that I'm, U.S. federal court versus local regional court.
So let's talk about federation. First of all, get us up to speed on what is federation, and then let's talk about the federator.
Yeah, how does federation apply even in the legal industry for our law firm customers? Federation really means federating or associating additional sources, bringing them together. And we use federation in really three different manners. First, let's talk about federation for bringing sources together. Another global law firm, different from the one I was just talking about, they had decided they had 4 different SharePoint systems around the world that supported their regional law offices. And they wanted to provide a global, because there are many times where you're doing, global law. Your company A is the same as this law firm. They operate in, France, Germany, England, and, California. So they wanted to provide a global search, enterprise search. They had everything set up very, very well structured in their SharePoint systems in the 4 different regions. So we brought the federator in, and the federator basically allows us to, when you type in, arbitration, that same search goes out to all 4 different systems, and it comes back within 2 seconds and basically brings all the results back from all the different regions into one, Google-like interface for search. So the federator with, our BA Insight product was their first actual product that they bought with BA Insight, and it served that simple purpose of federating. This law firm was actually more structured and planned than a lot of customers that I've worked with. They actually had the same basic layout inside their different SharePoint systems. So, for example, they had an office definition, they had a practice area definition, and the different categorizations were consistent across all 4 environments. So whether you were in South Africa or EMEA, you basically had the same categorization scheme in place already because that's the way they had structured it. So not only did the federator bring the results back, but if you type in arbitration, you would get a perfectly balanced set of results regardless of where it came from, whether it came from EMEA or Australia. If arbitration showed up 52 times in the document in Australia and 5 times in the title, and it didn't weight as high inside the US, you'd get the Australian document back, which is good and bad in some ways. I mean, it's a fundamental, brings you to a whole different area of search, which is about relevancy and tuning. So this customer, we had talked about VR and visual refiners. This customer bought visual refiners as well because it allowed them to put up a nice, clean set of very useful filter tools in their global search that would apply across the board, across all 4 regions and in the federated regions. Now, let's talk about relevancy. You type in arbitration, you're in the New York office, you're in the real estate group. Do you really want to see a document from Australia on arbitration? Perhaps, but probably not. So how do we do 2 things? How do we personalize search to you, or maybe direct the relevancy of search to be pertinent to you and your position? So you're an attorney, you're in the New York office, and you're in the real estate group. The federator, because it actually is issuing the queries out and consuming the results back in, allows you to tune relevancy or adjust both the query going out and the results coming back in. What do we mean by adjust? And how does that pertain to relevancy? Well, you, the attorney in the New York office, is in the real estate practice group. We know 2 things about you then. Your office is New York, and your practice group is real estate. The federator has a simple, we call them stages, but it has a stage where you can define what you would like to do to augment the query, and we call this stage the dynamic relevancy. So in the case of this attorney who is in New York, we want his office potentially to impact his query. So documents that come from his office should probably rank higher or be more relevant to him. So inside the federator stage, you can basically tell it, hey, when you issue the query, grab the person's office who's issuing the query and weight the documents from his office a little bit higher. And you can adjust the numbers. So you can, how much higher. It's always fun things to do with the customer, actually, to adjust relevancy. And then you also know his practice group. You can do the same thing for his practice group. Real estate documents should rank higher. So when he runs his arbitration query, he would actually see more documents from his local office and his practice group than he would otherwise, or than a person in Australia running the same query would see. So the federator is used to bring things together, but we've done a lot more with the federator, and the federator is an interesting name for it because it does do a lot more. In this case, it has a stage where you can dynamically tune relevancy to the person running the query, or by other means. We have dynamic relevancy. We use the federator to recently change the document weights because there was a content source. It was an online library of precedents, and they provide good documents, and we brought those in. We have a connector where we can go actually index all of that content into your enterprise search, and we've done it for a couple of customers with this one content source. But we found out that the way they structure their documents, because they're very good at it, makes them always come to the top of your search results. And if you're mixing them directly, we wanted to make sure they were weighted the same as the internal precedents of that the law firm was keeping themselves. So we detuned them just a bit to make things balance out. So you'd get 3 or 4 of their documents as well as 5 or 6 of your own documents.
Sure.
in the top 10.
You just mentioned it, but I'm curious if you could comment on indexing all these sources versus federating.
Oh, yeah, it's a common question and a very valid one. Federation relies on the outside source providing you with information in real time. However, federation, in the case of that customer with the 4 SharePoint systems, worked excellent because they were 4 SharePoint systems that were laid out the same way. So federation is a very complex subject when you want to start tuning the ranking and the relevancy of all the content sources. So federation in that customer's case was a perfect solution because things were balanced to begin with. They were in the same basic structure and format and source system. Indexing, on the other hand, is when you go out and you grab the content and you actually put it into your search index. In the case of the prior customer I was talking about that had the 50 different offices around the globe, we indexed all of the content from their offices because bringing it in was quite possible, 50 million documents. And it's possible to do that, but it also puts it all into the same search index and gives it a balanced relevancy ranking to begin with. So index your content when it is, normally you index your content when it is your own or when it is absolutely necessary to bring it in. Federation is good when you have outside sources that are either A, balanced to begin with, or B, available resources that you can't necessarily index. I'll diverge from the law firm example for a minute. And the pharmaceutical industry, there are a lot of content sources out there or libraries out there where you can search for, the formula for, I won't say Advil because you probably can't get that directly, but you can search through a lot of libraries on pharmacology. And they're available to you. And the same is true in the legal industry. Those sources quite often will not let you bring copies of everything over. So you have to federate to those other sources. When you federate to a source like that is very distinct from your own content, distinct and unique, what I found that works really well is you put up a second set of results on the same page. So you're searching for, arbitration in your own search center, and there's a panel on the right which is arbitration in, case law of XYZ. So it'll run in parallel, so to speak, and give you 2 places to go instead of one, one list you get 2. So federation works well in keeping them separated but giving you both at the same time type applications.
Okay.
Let's take a little bit of time to talk about the architecture of the federator. The federator, when you type in something to search, that search goes somewhere. The federator sits in front of wherever it's going and decides how to send it and where to send it. So the federator architecturally is right behind your search box and in front of anything else that happens down below. So the federator receives your query, decides to send it to, in the case of the SharePoint federation, decides to send it to the 4 SharePoint systems, gets the results back from the 4 SharePoint systems because it's also in front of your page that is going to show you the results, and then puts them up on the page. In the case of dynamic relevancy and how the federator can augment the query, because it's behind the search box, it goes and fetches, this person's in this office, this person is this practice area. I'm going to use that to manipulate the query and change the ranking of the results that come back. We have other customers who use the federator for a few other different things. Actually, I have a law firm that does something very creative. With the federator on augmenting the query, they decided that the attorneys, when you're filtered on client company A,
Mhm.
They want to see all the documents that relate to that client, company A. But they also wanted to see additional information that would be available even if you're on company A. This document may or may not, or document set may or may not have anything to do with company A, but it's pertinent, but it's not specifically tagged to that company. So they put together a little web page, if you will, in their intranet where any attorney or person supporting the attorneys could add things to what they wanted to have show up on client A or client B or client C. So every time we run a query and it's filtered by client A, we look into this, is a database behind it that says, oh, we also want you to show A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So we augment the query to ensure that we're including things that may not be specifically tagged to client A. So it's another form of query augmentation. Sounds a little crazy, but what it really gave them the ability to do is include things that were, say client A is in the manufacturing, automobile manufacturing industry. Include things in the client A section, if you will, that pertain directly to the automotive industry. And they did this because they were opening up client A to the actual people at client A as a, quote, customer type portal. So here's a law firm that's gone kind of beyond just enterprise search. They're opening up a portal to their customers. And effectively, when you're a customer, you're on, a filter, which is your company name.
That's fascinating.
And they wanted to, make sure that they could keep it open-ended enough to not just be your company documents, but other things that might be either written internally at the law firm that they wanted to present, marketing to the customer, or just things that are pertinent to the industry that the customer is in.
It's very clever. I as you were describing it, I couldn't imagine, is this making more work or less? But now I feel like I get it. That's fascinating.
A little bit of work for the people entering, I want A, B, and C, or and actually what they could enter was literally other searches, so they could kind of go beyond. And so it's kind of an odd way of, you're on a filter, so to speak, but we're giving you things that are outside the filter. You'd be surprised how many real e-commerce companies do that. You may be filtered on, iPhone 6S, or what is it, 7S now?
Right, 7.
Cases, but they're going to show you some other stuff at the same time.
Sure. All right, so let's wrap it up. Takeaways from now. I know you've been talking about a couple of specific customers, but if we again go back to a little bit higher level, from just lessons of legal implementations, what are your sort of top 3 takeaways on helping others move forward?
I'll go back to the challenges I think law firms have: a lot of content and security around that content. I would suggest, when you're enabling people to find things, knowledge management, search is really the right approach. You really do want to make it searchable. Not searchable in that one system that it lives in, or that, one HR person that can go find the billing record, for a customer. Mm-hmm. You really want to approach it as enterprise search. And keeping it simple is the best approach. I've worked with a lot of law firms that have very large projects that really surface the ability to search, 50,000 key precedent documents. Well, that's good. But you spend a lot of time, if you spend too much time just trying to do one small area of your business as a whole, I think you're missing out on the ability to make it much more. Mm-hmm. For example, precedents are key documents that people spend a lot of time on, and I have worked with customers where that's what they're going to represent in their search system, only the precedent documents. Well, why not have a filter that is precedents, pre-selected, if you will, if you wish. But why stop there? Don't assume you know everything that the end user might want, or the most important thing that the user might want is what you're going to put into your system. I worked with one customer that had a really, really interesting situation arise. It was a smaller law firm, about 1,000 people, which is usually about 500 attorneys and 500 people supporting them, and a fairly small IT group. The IT group, they brought in a third-party outfit to come and analyze, how they were doing. How's the IT team supporting their customers? And one of the end results was the MBWA, management by wandering around. It's not really management in this case,
Sure.
but go visit your customers, right? So the IT group, they spent quite a bit of time going to visit their customers, and their customers cared about things that the IT group really wasn't focusing on. The customers, the attorneys and the support people for the attorneys, really don't care about the technology. What you're using underneath. They just want to find things fast. They want their phone fixed when they have a problem. They want the thing to work on their phone, when they dial in and things like that. So one of the project that I got involved with them on was enterprise search, and we had 2 attorneys on the team, which is unusual. But I must admit, the end result at that customer were little things that made a kind of a big difference in the system we put together. It was an enterprise search
things
system.
I imagine you never would have thought of.
There was a simple thing. I remember one of the lead attorneys who, was on the project and quite active, saying, I really just want a little checkbox over there that says exclude emails, because our group, the practice support lawyers, is really, focused on the documents and providing the proper and correct documents all the time. And a lot of emails, go into the systems, and indexing emails is a whole different subject. But she said, just give me a little checkbox there that says exclude emails right on the landing page. So they ended up with like 4 options, the Google box, and like 4 options on the landing page. And this was one of them. And it made her more efficient, and it made, her team more efficient. And that's really what matters. We're trying to make people efficient and find things and let them do their job faster. But,
Sure.
The wandering around, actually visit your customers. Don't think because, hey, I'm in technology, I'm smart, I can make things do things. But that's not what it's about. It's about the end customer and making it easy for people to find things.
You have mentioned a number of products in our conversation here. I'm going to put links to things like the search visual refiners and the Federator in the show notes. We also have a Federator white paper, and of course I'll point to the BA Insight Legal Search Solutions page if you are interested in more information on how BA Insight supports law firms. Anything else you think we should include in the show notes, Rick, before we close up?
No, not that I can think of. No, no. It's actually always a pleasure working with law firms. They're, old phrase, high tech. A lot going on there.
That's right. I love it. That's great. Well, thank you so much, Rick Fafard, for your time, for joining us again on this very show. We certainly appreciate your insights, and look forward to having you back.
All right. Thank you.
On behalf of Rick Fafard, I'm Pete Wright. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, for downloading and listening to this show. And you know what really helps, and we don't ask about this very often, but if you are listening to us through a podcast app that offers a directory, or iTunes, for example, pay it forward. 5-star reviews absolutely help others when they are searching for information on these kinds of topics. It will surface our podcast for them. So if you're getting anything out of these podcasts, we sure appreciate you paying it forward. Drop us a 5-star review and help others to learn more about search and the kinds of topics that we discuss on this show. Thank you very much. And we will catch you next week right here on Shared Insights, the podcast from BA Insight.